Wyndham Garden at 35.
Are y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to go ahead and call the November GETAC meeting to order. We have been stalling, waiting on a quorum because we believe Dr. Beeson is finishing up a class, so we're going to talk real slow. We will not take any action because we do not have a quorum and won't do so until we have one. As always, we read our vision as a unified, comprehensive, and effective EMS trauma system for a healthy, safe Texas. And our mission is to promote, develop, and maintain a comprehensive EMS trauma system that will meet the needs of all patients and that will raise the standards for community health care by implementing innovative techniques and systems for the delivery of emergency care for the entire population.
Chief?
Yes.
I believe you do have a quorum.
We do?
You have 8 members present.
That's my Aggie math again, so
That's
I
okay.
strike that. We do have a
That's
quorum.
okay.
All right.
So can I make a motion for something?
Sure, you can make a motion to approve the minutes, yes. I stand corrected, we do have a quorum. We have a motion to approve the minutes in a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very well. Member chair report and discussion. I will bump that down a little bit closer to the committee reports. First off, we have the Assistant Commissioner report for Division for Regulatory Services. Kathy Perkins, Assistant Commissioner.
Ms. Perkins sends her regrets. She had a personal family emergency and is not able to be here. This is like the first time in 23 years that she has not attended this conference and this annual meeting of GETAC, so she sends her regrets. So I guess I will just go into my report.
Yes.
I wanted to give you an update on the neonatal rules, which are moving through the rules process. These rules posted in the Texas Register this past Friday. They are there for a 30-day comment period and would become effective in sometime in May to June. The trauma rules, we continue to work on those trauma rules. EMS and the trauma designation, stroke rule, and the RAC rule have had multiple stakeholder meetings to gather feedback from the stakeholders. For trauma, we actually did a webinar to try to open it up to get feedback from some of the more rural areas. There were about 140 participants signed in when they started the webinar. So that was successful. We will actually start doing some more of those as we move through doing these rules. And that, I believe, is a topic for one of your agenda items today. Any questions on rule update? Okay. We did talk about this at RAC chairs today, and I asked that the RACs began reaching out to their facilities to bring them under their umbrella to begin discussions on having a neonatal committee or however they wish to set up a structure so that these facilities can participate within a neonatal region. Okay. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the transition of regulatory services. We are in the process, from the last session, we have been moving forward in going through the process of preparing to de-license some programs or deregulate some areas, move other areas out to other agencies, and then there are particular areas within our regulatory services that would be taken up under the umbrella of HHSC. They would move over to HHSC. Part of this preparation has been a functional analysis that we have done across the agency In the Department of Regulatory Services, we did the functional analysis for all those programs that would be remaining with DSHS. We are in the process of completing this for trauma systems, which includes the designation programs and EMS licensing. Once those functional analysis are reviewed, there will be a report that will go through to HHSC. HHSC will then send that report on to the transition team, and it will make recommendations on where some of these programs will land. There are public hearings for this transition period. If you go to the HHSC website and in the search bar put in transition, you will come up to the web page, and it has a timeline and the activities that are going on. And for regulatory purposes, for EMS and trauma systems, and it would not impact us until 2017. There will be public hearings on this process. They will be posted on the website. It is an opportunity for the stakeholders to have input into how the agency might look and function. I believe there's already 1 or 2 public hearings already scheduled. That's in advance of this report that comes out to HHSC or from HHSC, and I'm not sure how that works, but it is an opportunity for our stakeholders to have input into what this would look like. There is an option to sign up for alerts on GovDelivery on that transition website, and again, that is on HHSC's internet. Questions related to that? None. Okay. We'll move on to budget and staffing issues. We are still going through the process of fiscal size-up within our agency. The fiscal size-up is an effort between the agencies and the Legislative Budget Board to determine how many dollars are actually available, not just what was appropriated. The appropriations may not always come out to be what hits your account. So it's called fiscal size-up. That has not finalized yet, so we do not know what type of funding we have for fiscal year 16 and 17. We think 5111, which is our largest funding source, we think it will be flat, particularly for the racks. Tobacco, the corpus was appropriated out again, so we know for a fact that the tobacco dollars endowment will go down. We just don't know how much. For fiscal year 16, the department did make up that shortfall in what the tobacco dollars would be. So the racks were not negatively impacted for this year. I do not know what it will be for next year. 5111 is also the funding source that funds our operations, the lion's share of it. So with that, for our small staff of 20 people within our office, I have 5 vacant positions, and they are all frozen. They have not been posted and will not until we find out what our funding situation is. We have made some changes internally so that we can continue to do business and ensure that we cover payroll costs for our staff. As soon as we know what the funding will be and this fiscal size-up is complete, we promise that we will share this information with the regions, with the RACs, and with our contractors and with you guys. Questions related to budget funding?
Is there any good news?
Well, yeah, we're all here. We're all on the right side of the dirt, and it's a beautiful day outside. And that really concludes my report.
Any questions for Director Guerrero? Not Not seeing any, we'll move to the Assistant Commissioner's Report on the Environmental Epidemiology and Disease Registry section. John Villanacci.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. At the last meeting in August, I mentioned that we had lost the manager for the Injury Epidemiology Surveillance Program. I'm pleased to announce we have that position filled. Mr. Dan Dow, who is here, I believe, there he is, has taken that position. Mr. Dow has a degree in pharmacology from Cal State, Santa Barbara, University of California, Santa Barbara, sorry, Dan, and a Master in Public Health from Boston University. And his most recent job before coming here was with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, where he managed their injury surveillance and data analysis efforts over there. So I'd like you all to help welcome Dan to Texas. He's got a lot to learn in a big Texas state. With other things with the injury program, we currently have just one vacancy, which has already been posted and is being interviewed. So once that's filled, we'll have the staff, it'll be fully filled again. On September 30th, we officially completed the previous two-year project with the EMS Trauma Registry. Under that project, we're able to improve data submission processes with standardized XML upload processes, improve data submission feedback reporting for the EMS providers and hospital facilities, improve registry data upload and motor vehicle crash records for investigation, build data export capability to NTDB and NEMSIS, provide training for stakeholders on data management and abbreviated injury scoring, and build the automatic calculation of injury severity scoring into the registry. With respect to where we are right now, and what we've done and where we're going, for educational opportunities, which is one thing we always like to stress, last year we put a significant amount of effort into training, and to continue this effort, we're currently negotiating with TTAF to provide additional hospital and EMS data management training. Last year, the training they did was really well received by the participants, so we hope to continue that effort. As I mentioned in August, program staff had previously visited RAC, CEI, and R to present and discuss RAC-specific data and RAC-specific issues. They've now added RAC-Q to that list of RACs that they visited. Also last year, we were able to hold 16 training webinars on a variety of topics, and that really went well. We had approximately an average of over 100 participants per session. Staff, and we've posted all those webinars online, so people can actually go view those at their convenience. Staff also continues to work on data reports and prepare new injury briefs. Latest ones, we've got a hospital summary report, a linked data report comparing CABCO injury severity categories. These are the law enforcement categories to hospital assigned injury severity metrics. And as you can imagine, the correlation isn't very good. They've also prepared a homicide data brief and a suicide data brief, which is, all this is available on our website if you have any interest in these topics. I also mentioned in August we were successful in linking text.crash records with EMS and hospital records for the years 2010 to 2013. And to date, they've been able to use those linked records to examine such things like helmet use by cyclists involving EMS transport and variety of field health characteristics, such as Glasgow Coma Scale, heart rate, respiratory rate, etc. Improving the registry, where we are. At the last meeting, I actually mentioned that Consilience EMS Trauma Registry Maven software package was able to pass the NEMSIS version 3.3.4 certification process. I keep these numbers right. I'm now pleased to announce that it has been tested and deployed, so now the EMS registry is now able to accept NEMSIS version 3.3.4 data. And we're currently working with stakeholders to get them up to speed with that. And as I mentioned previously and other staff have, we're going to continue to accept and support legacy data submissions through December 31st, 2016. So as of January 1st, 2017, we'll be on to the NEMSIS. Also, has been presented at several of the meetings in response to stakeholder input, as we implement the national standards, fields linked to funding were made mandatory. We ran into some issues a few months back just testing this out, and not all those fields were made mandatory, so they weren't transmitted to my colleagues over in regulatory. So Those are now going to be mandatory. Stakeholders have requested it. And that's such things like county of occurrence of the run and the type and so on and so forth. So those will be mandatory, which means basically if they're not answered, the data won't be accepted. So I'll encourage people to answer those things. And this will give a more truer representation of the runs they actually make when report to regulatory. I'm going to present later in this presentation some information on the stroke and STEMI initiatives that are going on. And just to get a little ahead of that, the EMS trauma registry staff have actually met with the chronic disease folks who are in charge of that initiative and sort of looked at the NEMSIS data elements that we collect for stroke and STEMI and did a crosswalk with the elements that they're interested in collecting. So we will probably be able to provide them EMS data. And this gets real exciting, at least exciting for me, although I'll tell you later, but it's exciting because we'll be able to do such things as perhaps link those data to hospital discharge data, to look at outcomes, and possibly even start linking those data to emergency department discharge data, which our agencies began collecting about a year ago. So those data will be available. That'll open up a whole new realm of things that we can start looking at. Other things, the trauma registry, and I said EMS registry, this is trauma registry. I think we always talk about it as one, and it's really more than one registry we built. We have an EMS registry, we have a trauma registry, and we also have reportable injury registry. And they're all somewhat connected, but they are separate. So, I think we always talk about this as one unit, but it's really three. In August, I reported we were in the process of testing receipt of the NTDB XML files, and the trauma registry is now able to accept 2014 NTDB XML files. And the NTDB file extract process has been implemented, and the injury severity score calculator is now fully functional for web data entry users. And these are the facilities that probably would use that, the level 3s and level 4s. One of the other things that we've really tried to focus on is customer service and improving customer service. And so in part of that, timeliness is one of the metrics that we've established to try and look at that. In 2015, we were able to successfully address 1,486 customer service requests, or approximately 135 a month, with an average response time of about 2.2 days. Doesn't mean we got them all done, but we're making progress on that. What's next? Well, I mentioned last time also that we had gotten the TechStock grant. Well, it's now implemented as of October 1. We began this process. And in 2016, some of the things that we're going to focus on are going to be improving data quality by collecting injury and trauma information based upon NTDB and NEMSIS 3.4, which is we're going to start moving to. Okay, so as you know, this is a train that you got to keep chasing, it seems like. Part of our plan this year and next is to work towards getting to the 3.4 national data standards. We're going to try to improve our ability to use Maven's system to better capture reportable injuries, which includes traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, and submersion injuries. Improve the program's ability to extract data from the system for epidemiologic analysis, and also improve the ability for our users to be able to extract data from the system as well. That's something we really need to look at, improving that system and making that available. Data linking of health information, data to provide textually better assess patient care, improve service delivery, integrate data analytics software to create dashboards for information reporting, working with the Texas Transportation Institute to use EMS trauma registry data to evaluate motor vehicle crashes occurring in rural and urban areas. And then we're also going to be working with the Dallas Injury Prevention Center to evaluate pedestrian and motor vehicle interactions. I like that term, pedestrian and motor vehicle interactions, to identify areas of need for traffic safety modifications. For the chronic disease program, one last thing, because this is very important. We talked about rules that you guys are looking at. We're also going to be revising the part of the rules that deal with the EMS and trauma reporting. So staff have been reaching out to stakeholders, getting some preliminary input on that, and we'll probably be planning on presenting that to the DSH's Health Services Council in May of 2016. So hopefully we'll be able to get that to this group before that, so you guys could take a look at that as well. I was asked to provide a brief update for the chronic disease prevention section, which I mentioned before, which was Rider 67. So this is Dr. Patricia Moore, who's the director for the chronic disease prevention section, asked me to do this. And Rider 67, which is part of House Bill 1, the General Appropriations Act, provided our department with $6.5 million over the next biennium. And this is to fund cardiovascular disease and stroke projects. Now, specifically, they directed us to allocate $4.5 million of that directly to the University of Texas system to administer a statewide stroke clinical research network, stroke system of care coordination. And they directed us to take the remaining $2 million to devote to stroke and STEMI data collection activities. The chronic disease prevention section folks met with various stakeholders and decided that they were going to use the money to continue the current data collection initiative with additional focus on rural areas of the state. Now, this involves contracting with each of the 22 RACs through August 2017 to enhance stroke and STEMI data collection across Texas. Funding allocation and a draft scope of work actually was sent to each RAC on November 6th. Official contracts were sent out the following week with an effective date of November 15th. So contracts were very effective, and a contract to kickoff meeting was held November 19th, and I think there's been a couple of subsequent meetings discussing data elements that have taken on. And the only thing is, one last announcement, which I've told a few of you, is that this, I'm sorry to say, this is my last presentation to you all, because I will be retiring from state service at the end of the month, so it's been my pleasure, and thank you.
Thank you for your service. I'll see if there's an opening between Ed's and mine room in the home for you, if you're interested. Any questions for Dr. Vianacci? All right. Next, we have the Assistant Commissioner Report, Division for Regional Local Health Services, Dave Gruber, Assistant Commissioner.
I'm sorry, there's no one here to give the report.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and do chair comments at this time. First of all, I want to thank the Department of State Health Services for restoring the Little Creamery in Brenham. I appreciate that very much. Thank you for that. That's a hallelujah. Also, today we had several new committee members come for orientation. If you're out in the audience, would you stand up, please, so everybody can see our new committee members? I saw at least 2 or 3. I see more than that. Very good. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you. So I want to take just a little bit of time, if you'll indulge me, a few comments, and at the end, actually it was Jody's idea, I'll blame him. If we could grab a quick picture before we move into the committee chair reports, I promise not to take up too much of your time. When I first came onto the council, it's been about 12 years or so, a little bit of activity before that. I don't remember if it was Dallas or Fort Worth, but my first meeting was, we were up on a platform, and I thought, and it wasn't just a short platform, it was a really high platform, and I walked up there, and Ed Rock ran the meeting, and there were some people that were unhappy, and there was a lot of discussion, and I thought, boy, this is crazy. I didn't expect it to be anything like this at all. And then a short time later, we went on a strategic planning retreat, and one of the council members showed up with an IV in place and an IV pole, and I thought, wow, I had no idea what I was really getting into. It's really getting crazy. And then I realized over time that it's not crazy, it's just people are very passionate and committed about this GETAC process. And it's been an amazing process, and if you look back over 12, 15 years or longer, the distance we've all come is just fantastic. I mean, we're not going to have the state EMS director calling ambulance agencies one by one anymore, asking if, brother, can you spare an ambulance? We've got strike teams and task forces, and I think now we're working on the Ebola mobile or something along those lines, which is great. We listened to years for registry problems, and now we're getting data and we're getting reports back, and Just the list of accomplishments and things that have gone on through GETAC over the years is just really staggering, and I hope that, I think we asked the committees a few times to please tell us what you've accomplished over the years, because between the council and committees, it is just a lot of stuff, and it's great for Texas. When I come in the room, I always feel like I'm overwhelmed because of the number of champions and the brain power in the room. It is overwhelming. Yeah, apologize. I'm just, at this moment, overwhelmed with gratitude to have been part of this. And I thank God, and I thank my wife, Ann, who's back there, wave. Yes, your husband's making a fool of himself. Thank this council. Thank the Texas Fire Chiefs for their support. And again, I thank all of you for all the hard work you've done. It is just a blessing that I've got to even be in the room with you, and I will miss this. But I know it'll persevere without me, and I will look forward to seeing y'all in the future in a different role, and I thank you.
Yeah, let's see if I can get it. So we are not done yet. So we still have a meeting to conduct, but right now it is the time for us to express our appreciation to Chief Riley for the leadership he has shown. It's always interesting when you just see somebody quarterly and then you sit around a table and deal with a lot of different issues. Not all good, some are contentious, and have been very, very impressed with how well Chief Riley advocates for the state, advocates for our citizens, runs the meeting so well, and makes life better for everyone. So on behalf of the state, on behalf of the council, myself, and we'll throw the governor in there, we'd like to express our appreciation to Chief Riley for his service to the council with a certificate already framed. The state of Texas, from the governor, to all whom these present shall come, greetings. Know ye that this official recognition is presented to Vance Riley in recognition and appreciation for his years of meritorious service to the state of Texas as a member of the Governor's EMS and Trauma Advisory Council, 2004-2015. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, you are.
Huh? Well, you know moms, they take pictures of everything, so.
She's got pictures of a little bit this way so that it doesn't pick the sun. Is everybody in here?
No, I'm sitting.
I don't know. Look at Joe. Look at Jane.
Going off or not, do you?
Okay.
Did you get it?
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much.
Every time we have a meeting, Chief Riley's been there. He's been there for us when it's easy. He's been there for us when it's tough. And he's given us some guidance that we have always needed and always cherished in the Education Committee. I just wanted to say thank you. First of all, sometimes you see the Education Committee running around in black shirts that we made a long time ago. So when you're running around, we want you to have one, too, that says GETAC Education Committee. And from our group, we'd like to present Chief Riley with the Partnership Award for Leadership, Management, and Vision presented to Chief Vance Riley in appreciation for your dedication and commitment to our mission and outstanding performance and lasting contribution to the citizens of the state of Texas, with appreciation from the Governor's EMS and Trauma Advisory Council, GETAC Education Committee, signed by myself, Jody Harbert, Deidre Blankenship, Jay Cloud, John Creech, Lori Lefevers, Kelly Weller, Robert Gonzalez, Greg LeMay, Taylor Ratcliffe, Oscar Salazar, and Wade Olson.
Again, thank you all very, very much. And with that, appreciate the kind comments and the gifts. I will be seeing you around, but at this point, it's time to get back to some GTAC business. So we'll start off with the Air Medical Committee. Shirley.
Yes, sir, thank you. Air Medical Committee met day before yesterday. We had several agenda items to go through. We did have a quorum. The greater part of the meeting was spent on looking at the rules, 157, 11, 12, and 13. The goals towards to getting these rules done is to try to get them in a logical order. And as we've identified several subjects that could be arranged together rather than just spread throughout, making it very difficult sometimes to find what you want. And also we're trying to make sure that we have the same requirements in 157, 11, 12, and 13 so that there's no conflict in there. And we found some discrepancies. So we're planning on having at least one special meeting early January, probably a 2-day meeting, to try to get those finished up and then get them sent in. And then we also want to make sure that we're not in conflict with the EMS proposed rules. We also did a response to the issues presented at the Air Medical meeting, at the EMS meeting, and the council meeting, just regarding some issues that some folks had with some air medical practices. So we went through, we had a special meeting and before this one, went through those and formulated our response. All of the issues that were in there had been addressed in the past before. So we formulated our response. We went through that, and we probably would look at having maybe a meeting or two with some of the EMS folks and trying to see if make sure that we have all of those issues taken care of, and that way we hopefully won't have to do this again. But we had a good meeting. That was basically the two things that we did. We have no action items.
Okay, any questions for Shirley? All right, seeing none, we'll move to Cardiac Care Committee. Dr. McCarthy is going to give a report in place of Dr. Smalling.
Good afternoon, thank you. Committee met and the bulk of the conversation was funneled into several recommendations for the goals for the committee for 2016, which are as follows. First is to develop and disseminate pre-hospital and pre-transfer protocols for the fibrinolytic administration in STEMI patients unable to meet 90-minute first medical contact to balloon criteria. Recognition that many hospitals have successfully achieved the 90-minute door-to-balloon time, but that many areas involving transfers still struggle to meet guidelines and care and national standards. So the committee is committed to help improving that process. Second is to complete an assessment in collaboration with the CVD and Stroke Council on the pre-hospital EKG cath lab activation in communities with less mature STEMI systems, so that the communities who have who have developed this process robustly can have that, their experience shared in other communities that are still a little bit behind. Number 3 is to update information on best practices in STEMI care on the GETAC SETRAC website, much like done at SETRAC, and we'll get more information out and make that more available to the community. Number 4 is to explore a closer working relationship with the GETAC Cardiac Care Committee and the DSHS CVD and Stroke Council regarding data elements and how we can collaborate to improve STEMI care in the state of Texas. Number 5 is to consider a written document or white paper on the optimal STEMI care system guidelines for distribution to all 22 RACs in Texas. The next item is area referred to GETAC for future action. This had a fair bit of discussion, but after discussion and comment, the GETAC Cardiac Care Committee made the unanimous motion to obtain data on outcomes for cardiac arrest patients in Texas from sources available to DSHS and GETAC, and that this data would be compared to recent publications on outcomes in comatose cardiac arrest patients as related to whether or not they were taken immediate to cardiac cath lab upon hospital arrival, and that further recommendations would be formulated for consideration for cardiac care involving cardiac arrest patients after formulation of the above analysis. We hope to accomplish that then. And announcements, the next GETAC Cardiac Care Committee will be on Thursday, February 11th, 2016.
Okay, we think we heard a request for council action. Would you go over that again, please?
It was the question referred for future action that we would like to explore the cardiac arrest outcomes.
Is that, in other words, the committee's asking to take that further?
That's correct.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I don't think that requires any council action.
Okay. And that's
Okay.
conclusion.
Yeah, I don't. Any questions for Dr. McCarthy? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Disaster emergency preparedness, Eric Epley.
Good afternoon. Disaster met on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. Many discussions about the recent Paris attacks, active shooter and IEDs, et cetera. And so we talked about EMTF response to that, and then that led really to a longer discussion about regional mutual aid versus statewide mutual aid responses and the state program versus local, helping your neighbor, and then helping your neighbor's neighbor, and how we need to work that into the system. And so the committee agreed that RACs and local providers and the EMTF program really need to work and coalesce. We've done a great job on the state level. We can go to a hurricane, we can go to big jobs, but really it's the next piece between local mutual aid and then this giant statewide activity, and it's what we call the squishy part in between that really needs to be fleshed out. We want to leverage some of the work that Houston area has done with their regional catastrophic preparedness grant. Several years ago, they had a program called the AMOPS operational plan, and so we want to leverage some of those things and figure out how EMTF in the less than 12 hours, kind of the 3 to 6 hour window. It's not a state activation necessarily. So you're going to see a lot of work, I hope, on that in the near future. We discussed the TMORT, the Texas Mortuary Response Team effort that SETRAC has been working on. They bought that disaster mortuary unit several years ago, and there's a strong group of forensic pathologists and other people from the Harris County Coroner's Office and other medical examiner's office, and some other people around the state that are working on that effort through Allison and Jason. I can't think of their last names off the top of my head. But that group has been working effectively. One of the challenges they have is bringing that group together in a response mechanism. They have the talent, but they don't have the infrastructure to get them deployed. How do we get them reimbursed and paid? And so the idea that's bubbled up is to add them to the EMTF program, no different than the mobile medical unit, the ambuses, the medical incident support teams, et cetera. And so the GETAC committee discussed that for about 20 minutes, and they are going to recommend to DSHS and to EMTF execs that the TMORT process be added as another component to EMTF. So you'll see that coming. The EMTF MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement, has been finalized. That's version 2.0. And if you guys remember, there was a fair amount of controversy when we got that one done the first time. And we made a commitment, the EMTF program made a commitment to those hospitals and EMS agencies. If we can get the first one signed, we will revisit and deal with some of the issues. And so we've done that to keep the faith. That next document's ready and will be going out for signature in the next month or two. Probably will end up being a 12 to 24 month grandfathering kind of clause way to transition from one document to another, given the fact that legal and other people will have to review that. Downstairs, if I was just actually doing my report, in February of this year, we made a recommendation to you guys to support the infectious disease response unit, that concept after the Ebola things. And we're sitting right now waiting for the execution of the contract for a little over $4.7 million over the next 3 years to build out that infectious disease response unit. So sometimes things happen quicker than we expect. There's a mock-up, there's a conceptual example of that, a display downstairs. If you make your way through over to the MMU, the big field hospital, over to the right side, there is what we think, the IDRU might look like on the EMS side. That will include both 8 caches of EMS supplies and also hospital supplies, along with a team that can be rostered rapidly for 8 regions. And then there'll be 72-hour caches located in El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. And they'll be able to respond if one of the small caches is called up, any of the 8 24-hour caches. The 72-hour cache will go, and then there's a giant 18-wheeler 10-day cache that will follow behind it as well. So we picked 10 days, by the way, because the vendor managed inventory says if we order today, it's going to take 7 to 10 days before you might actually see some of that stuff arrive. We thought, well, we better have that on hand. That way we can cover the minute we order, we'll be able to survive, hopefully, and not have to have resupply rapidly. Finally, Jory and I, along with Dinah from TTAF and others, we just had a RAC Chairs meeting. We're going to be pushing both the Hartford Consensus and, more importantly, a Stop the Bleeding Texas kind of campaign. The American College of Surgeons has a huge effort to try to, it's terrible that people could bleed to death, from a lower extremity arterial bleed. And no amount of ambulances driving fast, fire trucks and police cars driving fast, we need to make sure that bystanders, no different than AHA push bystander CPR, every AED in schools and buildings ought to have a tourniquet with them, right? People need to understand that at a bystander level and make them initial responders. And so you're going to see a coalition come together in Texas like no other, and we're really going to try to make sure that, at least in Texas, people have a really good chance of surviving what are really preventable death. And it's sad, but it's true. Where we are today in society, these are going to continue to happen, I think. We wish they didn't, but whether it's a movie shooting, whether it's a terrorist activity, we've got to be prepared, and so you're going to see that as a big push in the coming months. And that's it. I'll entertain any questions.
Any action items for council?
Not for the council. So we have one going to DSHS about moving TMORT to EMTF, and then we have the other thing. I just want to make the announcement about our support, and we hope that you guys, so independently out of my disaster committee role, I would say that Jory, Dinah, and I would really appreciate it today if you guys will consider GETAC strongly supporting the Texas Stop the Bleed campaign. And that's really bubbled up in the last 4 or 5 days. This is not something, it's been underway for a long time. But really this idea of us putting everybody together kind of happened here in Dallas.
Okay. That is an item on our agenda tonight.
Okay.
Any other questions for Eric? Thank you.
Thank you.
Education Committee, Jody.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, everybody. Education Committee met on the 22nd. We had 4 agenda items. One was continued development of advanced practice community health paramedic curriculum. Been really happy to see that moving forward. Had representatives from the EMS committee, the education committee, and medical directors with Dr. Sharon Malone, who's really been leading this up and getting the charge going. They have looked at the mission, they're writing mission statements, looking at the establishment of core content. We will continue to move forward on this, and they're doing some really good work there. Second was review of DSHS Education Training Manual. This is a technical manual that we look back, and the last time we had reviewed it was 2009. We certainly seemed like it was before then, but it wasn't. So we will take that on at our next meeting and start to go page by page. Realizing this is a technical document, it's a document that's used in most of the coordinator courses. There's some things in there that we need to take a look at and really kind of make this a maintenance document that becomes more dynamic instead of static, where we don't look at it for 5 or 6 years to keep that one going. Item 3 was discuss functional job description for EMS personnel as related to ADA. This is really not for EMS providers, but more for education programs. We've had some people who've been applying to programs that functionally may not be able to do the job. And we had to separate this into looking at this from a didactic standpoint or classroom standpoint, as well as skills, as well as clinical, to work with some providers. Maybe the person who applies would be admitted into the program knowing that they probably couldn't graduate, but we certainly didn't want to stop them from gaining the didactic knowledge. So we're just going to kind of take a look at that, look at education institutions that are private, that are volunteer, that are college, and see if they need any technical assistance, and see if we can put some initiatives forward to give everyone an opportunity to achieve their goal. Item 4 was to review the Hartford consensus and to look at Stop the Bleeding. Certainly after a little discussion, the committee looked and said, you know, this sounds like CPR when it first started. It sounds like AED when it first started. It sounds like 12-lead when it first started. So it's a fresh start. And certainly if you see something, do something. It's been part of the mantra. So after a little discussion, the committee did vote and second to support the idea of Stop the Bleeding, or the Hartford Consensus 3. We did want to take it one step further and possibly look at moving some of that education and training to maybe some CERT teams, looking at what we can do to some high school students. We have a lot of EMS programs that are now in high schools, so if we can add that to what's being done in the public. We certainly have immediate responders, we have professional responders, and as many of those people that we can get trained, rather. We're certainly looking forward to do that. We'll have our second EMS Summit, which will be held April 15th and 16th in Corpus Christi at the Omni. Last year, we were looking at a very small group. We had a very large group, so we're going to plan for a much larger group this time. We had 3 members who had expired. It was Jay Cloud, Dr. Ratliff, and myself. Thank you to the council for reappointing Dr. Ratliff and myself. Jay Cloud did not reapply, so the 2 new members are Alan Welch from Beaumont and Makiara Trusty from Aledo. We're very, very happy to have them and have talked to them. Our next meeting will be in January, and that will be TBA. We're looking at a couple of dates.
Any council action items?
No council action items.
Any questions for Jody? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the EMS committee. Dudley.